Chapter 3 Suzanne's Dilemma. Suzanne entered the plaza with Jim Barrett, a tall, rugged man with a smile that seemed to belong more in a pub than a quiet cafe. His presence brightened the dimly lit room as he shook the rain from his jacket, laughter rumbling in his chest. Together, they made their way to a secluded table, settling into seats side by side, the closeness both familiar and unsettling. When Jim's hand slipped to rest gently on her leg, the gesture felt deliberate, both comforting and slightly possessive, sending a thrill through her even as a flicker of hesitation crept in. They sipped their coffee quietly, and Suzanne couldn't help but steal glances at him, admiring the ease in his gaze, the natural way he moved through the room. Jim seemed completely at home in himself, exuding the kind of confidence she'd always admired and, sometimes, envied. Her own nature felt worlds apart, always cautious, always searching for meaning in every gesture. She had told herself many times to guard her heart, to keep herself at arm's length. But now, sitting here with him, she felt her usual walls weakening. Jim's hand lingered as he leaned in close, his gaze catching hers with that familiar smile. She felt herself leaning in, her doubts slipping away, the warmth of his hand enough to make her forget, if only for a moment, the caution that had always defined her. His smile softened, as if sensing her hesitation, daring her to let go. As their laughter softened, he whispered, "Let's go somewhere quieter." Suzanne hesitated, but the pulse of her heartbeat and the warmth of his touch made the choice for her. Before she could think it through, Jim's hand slipped over hers, guiding her up from the table, and they made their way up the dim hallway to the private booths on the plaza's upper floor. Once they reached the small, darkened space, Jim leaned in, his hand slipping around her waist, pulling her close as their lips met in a kiss that sent a thrill through her, filling the quiet room with a rush of heat. She barely had time to question it, to second-guess herself. In his arms, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. A cascade of emotions escaped her like water gushing over a waterfall. Every movement, every breath, carried her further from the caution that had once felt like armor, but now felt almost burdenless. She let herself give in, letting go of the need for meaning, for understanding. There was only the immediacy of his touch, the warmth that drove away her lingering doubts. When they finally pulled apart, Suzanne's cheeks were flushed, her heart still racing. She glanced away, a faint unease creeping in as she caught the satisfied grin on Jim's face, his gaze lingering on her with a comfort that felt almost too casual. She smiled back, trying to mask her uncertainty, but the thrill had begun to fade, leaving a hollow feeling in its place. They returned downstairs to their seats, and the quiet of the plaza felt suddenly strange, the sounds of the cafe seeming louder and sharper than before. The hum of voices, the clatter of dishes, it all felt different somehow, as if the world around her had subtly shifted. She wrapped her jacket around herself, the warmth from Jim's touch fading as the familiar ache of doubt settled back in.